Very good morning to the students of horticulture at Mojarla. This is Satish Reddy. I think I might have taught you in the second years, perhaps, but this is going to be a new course called as Remote Sensing and GIS Applications, which is going to be your HEES 3.12.3 course number. And this is purely based upon the data that is going to be given out on remote sensing and GIS applications. So before entering into this course, I just want to give you a small introduction about this course. This is kind of an advanced techniques that we use in general life, which are useful for agriculture and horticulture as one of these aspects going forward as to how the data could be taken up, how you actually can look at the plant populations and then several other things like nutrient effectiveness and all those things through space. Basically, without even touching anything, we are just going to get the data. And how are we going to tabulate the data? How are we going to analyze the data? And what are the different kinds of data that we get? How you actually collate everything? How you organize everything? And how you index everything is what's going to be in this remote sensing and GIS applications. So before we enter into this particular course, let's see what actually the actual course is being divided into two different things. One is remote sensing is one aspect. Second thing is called as GIS. So what remote sensing is basically acquiring of all the information is about remote sensing and then basically kind of getting the data. GIS is kind of you put up all the data at one particular set, you actually tabulate it, index it, and then you try to visualize what the data looks like. So basically, GIS is geographical information systems, but thing is you are trying to visualize the data. So whatever the data that you get, how it looks, and then what you could infer is the thing that you get through GIS. And for that getting of the data, what we use is called as remote sensing. So in this particular course, we are going to talk about what actually is remote sensing. Why do we use remote sensing in a large scale? What are the advantages and disadvantages of it? And why is it so related to agriculture and horticulture? And also the proficiency required to work on it. So initially we'll start with remote sensing and then there are 5 or 6 different steps to go through remote sensing. But in the first lecture, we'll try to see through about 3 to 4 aspects. And then we'll go into much more detail of remote sensing in detail in the further class. So coming to this next slide, now to see what actually is remote sensing. The definition says basically it's a science of acquiring information about Earth's surface without actually being in contact with it. This is done by sensing and recording reflected or emitted energy and processing, analyzing, and applying that information. So it's basically a entire information, but to be easy way, what remote sensing is, you are trying to get the information without getting in contact with the surface. So it could be through a photograph, it could be through some other sensors. Basically, it could be through a emission of radiation or anything. You're getting the data directly from from a distance without even coming into contact with it. That's all is about remote sensing. The simplest way is if somebody wants to see you, how you are doing. For example, this is the case, right? We are in COVID-19 scenario. I want to see how my class is doing. So what I do is I want you to come through a WhatsApp video, for example. So I am trying to see you, and then I can see how you look and then how you are doing and everything, but without coming in contact with you. Basically, I'm not even there to actually see you, but we are in a position to actually respond back. This is what is called as remote sensing. Remote sensing could be through photography, it could be videography, it could be anything like an energy. For example, if you have an audio file, if I want to give you a call and then see how you are doing, that comes into one of the remote sensing technique. But thing is, it's not sensing, it's a telecommunication. So it's a kind of a communication. We do it on a remote basis. That's what is remotely means, without getting in touch with the actual person. So there are different advantages of remote sensing. The first is basically if you are looking at the data from a outer space, you can cover a larger area. For example, if you are taking photographs of through a aeroplane or from a high-end coverage like satellites or anything, you can cover a large area and then you can do it multiple times. That's why it's what we call it as a repetitive coverage of the data. And it's very easy to collect because if you are putting a camera on the satellite, and then if you are trying to collect it every given hour or given month or a given day, basically you can do it multiple times, and it's very easy to procure the information. And as long as you have a buffer capacity to fill it up, you don't have any limitation on the collection of data. So how much data, for example, you have, let's assume people will have the new phones which probably have 8 megapixel cameras or anything, but somebody will have 32 GB phones, somebody will have 64 GB phones. Depending upon the space that you have, you can take multiple pictures through it, and then you can collect as much as videos as you can, or you can download as much movies as you can. But the limitation is only going to be your storage space. The same thing happens to be here. The only store limitation is going to be your space. Other than that, you can take multiple pictures, you can delete multiple pictures, you can actually add something else, you can make collages out of it, you can share the information, you can do anything, you can do a Skype video calling, whatever it is. The data is limitations are not there until you have a space limitation only. So third, the next one is basically you can analyze, collect the information, analyze, interpret, and then you can use it in multiple fields. That's what is the essence of it. Once you get the data, you can use it for multiple things. And then if you are looking at from the upper surface, basically from a bigger angle, for example, tsunami is coming around. So you can look at the data, you can look at the tidal waves, and then you can actually give a warning signs to these people, or it could be a forest fire. You can take the pictures, or you can take the video feed directly from the aeroplanes and then say, okay, the fire has started somewhere and it's going towards northeast at this particular juncture, and you can cut it off, and whatever the rescue plans that you want to do, you can. And then the next one is basically, it takes a little time or very less time to process the entire data. For example, if you have collected about a day's data, it takes about a few hours of it, depending upon the complexity of the data and depending upon the exact thing as to what you are trying to look at. So, and thing is, it is done remotely, so you're not disturbing any of these objects. So you're doing remotely. So no way that you are actually looking anything beyond that data, and no way you are coming in contact with the data. So object what you are tracking at is safe enough, and it reduces the collection of data. For example, if you want to take a crop data, for example, if you have about 20 acres of land and you have planted so many plants in the particular 20 acres. It could be tomatoes, it could be anything, it could be orchard plantations like mango or anything. And it is randomly placed, for example. And you want to take field collection of how many plants are there. And then it takes about a day or more than a day for a person or maybe a few people to go around the field to collect the sample. It could be 20 acres, it could be 50 acres, it could be 200 acres. But if you are looking at, if you can algorithm it perfectly, and then data science could be used into this remote sensing, taking a picture will tell you how many plants are there in the particular facility or the acreage that you are looking at, or different types of crops that are there. So it reduces the workforce and field collection, helps in map revisions. For example, if you have already have an existing map which is very, very old, like maybe about 50 years old geographical map, if you take the same map today, you can do a contour mapping and then say, okay, last 50 years back, this is how the Hyderabad looks like, and this is now how the Hyderabad looks like. So the extent of Hyderabad was maybe around the inner circle or inner ring road, but now it has gone beyond the outer ring road, and it has expanded about like 4 times or 5 times or 6 times, whatever the multitude that happens. So the color composite also tells you, gives you more clarity as to what actually it is. Like rather like looking at the panchromatic images of black and white images, you can see the composite colors. So now you can say, okay, this is water, this is a land, this is a greenery over there, this is a barren land over here, this is going to be a hill, this is going to be some sort of a space which is not being utilized. Lots of things that you could do. And the last one is basically it is relatively cheap to make when you have bigger lands and where there is no land survey methods. It is very easy to do a land survey mapping because you are doing it through an aerial photography and aerial things without directly coming in contact with it. So on a larger scale, it is very, very cheaper. But for these are all the advantages that's the reason why we actually use this remote sensing going forward. When you're looking at the disadvantages of remote sensing, when you're looking at small area, for example, if you want to do only for about half acre, maybe if you install about 2 people, they can run the entire show within an hour. But it costs you very minimal. But when you are doing it with a remote sensing, with you're doing it with a bigger equipment, then for a smaller scale or smaller area, it's going to be very expensive, and not everybody can do it. So you need a special scanning skills for it, and then the workforce have to be really trained enough, and they are expensive to analyze for repetitive photographs. For example, if you want to do you want to overlap images, and then you want to take multiple images, so that you want to have a exact number. For example, if you want a resolution of very fine resolution, you want to repetitively put on photographs, then it becomes expensive, because if you want to do the same thing multiple times so that you get accurate value, it's going to be a little expensive. So thing is, basically, when the data comes in, the settings are, even if you are taking a photograph and then the settings are done for the cameras through a human interference, so there might be a problem with the cameras, there might be a problem with the human interference, so there is a chance of human error as well, so which is a disadvantage that you might have. And sometimes when you're using high-end cameras, they might also give out electromagnetic radiation. So the data sensing, the data that you get out of reflectance pattern, what we call the emittance, will also get interfered with this particular active sensor data, which have these electromagnetic radiation, will actually kind of distort the data a little bit, not much. But this is also one of the disadvantages that you might find. And the third thing is, on the next thing is, basically you cannot leave it like that, so you have to calibrate it quite often. So for what you have done, for example, if you are taking a weight measurements also, you have to calibrate your weight checks. The same thing is with these calibrations for the other things also. So sometimes there are also classification errors due to some data being having a multiple phenomenal analysis, so you cannot have a single direct analysis that's going to be done. So sometimes there are going to be some sort of a error that you get, which might also be a disadvantage for this particular thing. So for other thing is, basically, as we said, the data, there's no problem with collection of data, but the limitation would be the data storage. So if you have a problem in storing the data, or you run out of space, so sometimes what happens is your data is going to be incomplete and temporary, so you have to go back again and do the same entire thing again, so that you to get the more clarity over it. Sometimes what happens is overestimation of the usage and costing. So for example, what people say is, okay sir, we are doing it with remote sensing, so it costs you, rather than 10 rupees, it's going to cost about 100 rupees, because we are doing it with a drone or something else, we are doing it as satellite. So for a smaller areas, definitely it's going to cost much, but if you are looking at a broader areas, if you are looking at multiple areas of scope, then sometimes people, in order to make it a commercial angle, not to make a business, they say, okay, it costs you about 20 times, 30 times, and then they rip you off. That's again a disadvantage to expand remote sensing in a wider scope of different areas of applications. So the basic remote sensing actually has seven or eight, six uh, steps. Basically, when you want to have remote sensing, first thing is you have to have different things. First thing is you need something to illuminate or energy source, which actually what we are doing at remote sensing is, basically you're trying to get the radiation. You get the radiation, you analyze the radiation, you put it into a data format, and then you look at the data. So in order for that, there has to be a illumination source. It could be a sun, it could be a moon, or it could be a source of light that you want to shed out. So energy source is the primary thing over here. When you see this is the sun is going to be the source where you have it as an A, and then the energy, whichever is being illuminated, has to come down through the atmosphere and then hit the ground. So the transfer between the sun to the ground is the transmittance, what we call it as a radiation, and the atmosphere plays a bigger role. So this is going to be one aspect. Third thing is interactions with the target. So when it hits out to the target, how is it interacting with the target is going to be the third one, what we call it as a C. Fourth one is, once this happens, then you have this substance, whatever it could be, a plant, it could be a soil, it could be a mirror, whatever it could be, it reflects back this energy. So once this reflects back, the transmission happening from here, and reception and processing, happening here at the satellite or a drone or any stations is going to be one particular angle. So it could be of anything. Basically, whatever the emittance is happening here is it has to be processed through the satellite and then or a drone, and then it has to be sent to a signaling source where everything data is being so it's sent to a commanding center, and then this again processes is processed through different sets of your computational network. It could be a laptop, it could be a bigger equipment that you are trying to process. And then once this is done, we are using the data, whatever we get, to map it out. What we call it as a GIS. From here all the way up to F comes into your remote sensing. And then once the data is here, you try to tabulate it, organize it, and trying to put it into a format where you can see a difference as to what's happening is called as GIS, which we are going to use it in multiple applications. It could be horticulture, agriculture, dairy, defense, it could be anything. So this is how the remote sensing works. So when we are starting with the first thing, what we said was we are looking at the illumination source, right? So whatever the data, whatever the energy source that we get from sun is being transmitted through electromagnetic radiation. So light is the source of illumination. When the illumination happens, the energy is being transmitted through electromagnetic radiation. So here the energy, you have electrical energy and magnetic energy, which are perpendicular and parallel. Basically, they are perpendicular to each other. And as and when the electrical things go this way, the magnetic radiation will go this way. So this is how the electromagnetic radiation will follow. So, and then it depends upon the frequency of the radiation and depends upon the wavelength through which the energy is transmitted. For example, the simplest example I would like you to put at is basically everybody has an access to your radio. For example, if you're FM radio, right? So it could be 91.1 or whatever that 93.4, 96.3, whatever that numbers are. So what they do is the same thing. The air signal is being transmitted to electromagnetic radiation, and then this traverses in the air as an electromagnetic radiation. Then you have two things. For example, all the FM radio that you hear in Hyderabad is not be able to, you will not be able to hear if you cross about 100 kilometers of distance. For example, if you are towards Kurnool area, if you once you cross Jadcherla, you will not be able to hear. If you are towards Vijayawada highway, you will not be able to pass through after Nalgonda. If you are towards Warangal, if you have command stations after about like 100-kilometer radius, that's fine. But the distance it could travel is only certain distance because of the amplitude and the frequency at which it goes out. So the things that we talked about is the wavelength and the frequency. What is frequency? It is the number of waves in a given time. For example, in 1 second, how many waves are going to be coming out is the frequency. And then the wavelength is how many, what is the distance between one high and 1 second high. What we call it as troughs and crests. So troughs are the ones which go down, crests are the ones which come up. So difference between these two is going to be your wavelength. Everybody has been through this in your 10th intermediate standards, and then you have been through this. So you all know what is mu is equal to c is equal to mu lambda, or the speed or velocity, what we call. It depends upon wavelength into frequency. So frequency is measured in hertz, while these wavelengths are being given in micrometers, nanometers, is denoted by your lambda. So in the case of electromagnetic spectrum, it starts very, very low from all the way from your gamma rays to X-rays to ultraviolet rays. Then comes your visible spectrum, then comes your infrared radiation, comes your microwave radiation, comes your radio waves. So depending upon what you are looking at, the frequency of gamma radiation is really, really high. And the radio waves, the frequency is very, very less, but the wavelength is really, really large. So when you look at your visible spectrum, what we have is 360 nanometers to 760 nanometers. So basically, when you talk about it, 0.4 micrometers or 400 nanometers to all the way to about 700 nanometers is your visible spectrum, which starts with your VIBGYOR, what we call violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. So this is how the spectrum is going to be reflected back, and then the major color that you normally see is your RBG, what we call it as red, blue, green, which are your primary colors. I want you all to remember this particular thing. The primary colors are your red, blue, green, which is going to be the primary ones that are going to be used in your remote sensing. So whenever you're talking about false color composites and all those things, all we are talking about is red, blue, and green, and then how we are going to use these colors to differentiate between the different kinds of materials. So as I said, so your visible spectrum is right here, and then anything above is your infrared, then comes your microwave, and then comes your radio wave. So basically, it depends upon what kind of bands you have and how much centimeters and all those things. This is for your reference only, just to see, to understand as to what it is and how the infrared radiation, it could be, is it near infrared, mid infrared, or far infrared radiation that we are looking at. Okay. So this is how the spectrum would look like. Gamma rays with a wavelength of very, very small with higher frequency. And then going down, the frequency will reduce and the wavelength will increase. Gamma rays followed by X-rays, followed by your ultraviolet, photographic UV band, visible spectrum. That's what's the colors that we see. Followed by your infrared, reflected IR band, thermal IR, what we call. And then this is what we use in your night goggles and all those things, is the thermal imaging. Then comes your radar, and then comes your radio wave. So when you come to the second stage, once you know the illumination is done and the electromagnetic radiation, second stage is basically it's traveling between the air from the illumination source of sun all the way down to your atmospheric scattering. So when you're talking about it, so you have three different kinds of scattering. So when you have the radiation coming down, you have different kinds of molecules of air. It could be ozone, it could be sulfur dioxide, it could be anything. So you have different things that you normally have. You follow through Rayleigh scattering, Mie scattering, and then you have non-selective scattering. So when you are looking at finer particles in the topmost portion, where you have finer molecules which interact with what it actually distorts the radiation, what we call it as Rayleigh scattering. The Mie scattering is basically a little bigger particles like your water droplets and all those things. And then non-selective scattering is through the clouds. When it comes through the clouds, we have selective happenings that have what we call it as non-selective scattering. So source is, when it comes from the source, the radiation directly doesn't come, but there is a lot of distraction that's happening within the atmosphere as well. So once this comes in, the carbon dioxide absorbs much of the radiation, resulting in your thermal energy. So this is how the energy also varies, and then water vapors and all those things change the format. So the atmospheric windows, whatever we have the gaps, will also have an effect on the transmission of electromagnetic radiation. And as a result, so different atmospheric windows will differ in a lot of things. For example, if you are taking it through a satellite, if a cloud cover comes in, it's very difficult for you to sense the same plot, because the radiation is unable to be passed through this cloud, or the reflectance what's happening from the ground, the plant which is reflecting it back, is unable to be received by the sensors on the satellite. So this is what is the difference that you might face. When it comes down to the ground, now we have talked about the illumination source, the transmission between the surface, the illumination source of sun, to the through the atmosphere onto the ground. Third one is, once it gets onto the ground, it hits the ground and then reflects back. So once it happens, there are three things that happens. Basically, when it hits the ground, it is being absorbed. So whatever it happens, it takes the energy, and then it keeps it with itself. Second thing is, it transmits. So it is transmitted within that thing. For example, it hits here, it transmits between the surfaces inside, or this lateral sides, or any side. Third one is, it reflects back. So you have three things. One is going down and then getting absorbed by it, transmitting through into the next surfaces. Third thing is reflectance. So the reflectances will happen in two different formats. One is called as specular. For example, this is nothing but it comes, hits the ground, and then reflects back, like it's your mirror. When light hits onto it, it goes back into the atmosphere as it is. But second one is called as diffused. So when it comes and falls onto the tree, it diffuses out, and then only a part of this radiation will be reflected back in different directions. So one is going to be taken out into the plant, into the trees, into the trunks, into the soil, and then the rest of it is going to be reflected back into the atmosphere. So as we see, it could be through the leaf, or it could be with the trunk, it could be the soil and other things. So when you are talking about it, it could be a reflection of green light or infrared light is what you normally see in your leaves. But in the case of water, water absorbs more IR light and reflects only the lower length of light. Basically, ultraviolet radiations and all those things are being reflected back to water. So that's the reason why when you have light reflected onto the sea or anything, you see a blue color because the reflectance is only towards VGR, what we call is the lower wavelength. So that's the reason why on a bigger scale we have the RBG images. So we can see red, blue, green is what is the normal primary color. So blue is the normal thing that you normally see. But when you look at the leaves, it is reflection of green light and the IR is predominant one rather than your lower wavelength of light. Okay, in the case of water. So radiation in water again has two different things depending upon the chlorophyll. If you have more chlorophyll or more vegetation, you have more reflectance of green. So when you have more algae, as I said, so you have more greenery appearance in your remote sensing. And then if you have a deeper things like oceans and all those things, uh, the light did not penetrate from the bottom to the top, so it becomes black. So if something is floating materials are there, then it becomes very difficult because they also emit a different kinds of wavelength. So different kinds of disturbances will definitely appear in the case of radiations. So when you're looking at the sensors, now the thing is basically you know how the light has come, what is the source, how it has come to the ground, how it has hit the ground, and how it has started reflecting back. Now you want to have something at the top to sense these data. So now soil or the plant is sending the data, and then you have to have something to take the data and sense it. So this is what is called as sensors, what you use in satellites and all those things, what we have called as passive or active sensors. So passive sensors is basically which actually need something like a sun to illuminate, and then this will take, like it's like a moon. It needs sun for its reflectance. So here you're getting the reflection from the earth, but source of light is sun, and then it is taking the radiation. But in the case of passive sensors, it is going to be happening only during the day because the sun is going to be present only during the day, and the illumination happens during the day only. While in the case of active sensors, they also have a small lens or the illumination source, so which actually sends the light and then it reflects back. Simple thing is basically uh, you have two different kinds of phones with you. One, the old phones where you can take a photograph, just take a photograph and then you can send it. Where and now the photograph, now the your cell phones have come up with a small flashlight. So now, if you're comparing with that, the old phones are your passive sensors. So you can only take pictures, like your Nokia phones, which are you can take pictures and save it and send it. But these ones, these can be taken up in low light because you have a flash. These are nothing but your active sensors. They can send the light. You can take a picture and then they can reflect. They can take the sensor back and then you can upload the picture. So same is the case with your satellites also, which are your active sensors and the passive sensors. Okay, so this is where we are going to stop this lecture and then see how we go. Tell me if you have any questions. I'm going to post this recorded video onto your class website or the WhatsApp video. Tell me your comments and then suggestions or any questions or if you have anything else. Okay, thank you and wish you all the best, and I hope this lecture helped you. Just scrolling through the lectures outlines which I sent earlier, this might be helpful for you. So just started recording it. So give me a feedback and then see how it went. Okay. Thank you very much.